I touched her. She touched me back. Yeah, you see some shit as a surgeon. Sure, you sat on your vibrating phone, and that's the reason I had to remove it from your colon. I did keep my mouth shut when the mayor's son needed 3 bullets removed with no corresponding paperwork. And yes, I did think it was odd when I pulled 3/4 of a rubber ducky from a grown man's stomach. We also see shit of a more literal variety. It comes with the territory. Hell, most of us think it's fascinating. Have you ever watched Dr. Pimple Popper? I can unknowingly lose an hour while watching footage of a recent procedure. I see it all, and then I want more. It takes a lot to faze us. Note the phrasing. I didn't say it's impossible to get under our skin. It just takes a hell of a lot. That brings me to last Tuesday. Have you ever heard of a uterine dermoid cyst? If so, it's probably in the context of hair and teeth can grow in those fuckers. People read that kind of garbage on the internet all the time, and they assume that it must therefore be true. The thing is, even a stopped clock is right twice a day. While mostly benign, those little monsters love growing on ovaries, and they can develop some pretty gnarly stuff inside. Some cysts have been known to store gallons of fluid. So, when I opened up a 37-year-old Caucasian female with one benign 2.5 centimeter ovarian lesion, it was just another day at the office. Her vitals were looking good, everything appeared as predicted, and I had the little monster trapped in my forceps. It was time for the fun part. I controlled my breathing as I began to cut. The tissue separated like al dente ravioli. It split nicely under the scalpel, yielding to my pressure, revealing its inner secrets slowly as I pressed further. It was sensual, nearly sexual to feel it react to my intrusion. I pulled the tissue back. That's when the first finger poked out. No, it wasn't a tiny little fetus digit. This was a full-grown, slightly hairy man's finger. And no, it wasn't necrotic. The thing was alive and dancing. After getting its bearings, the finger began to push away the tissue, widening the aperture. It pushed a second knuckle out, then began to crawl its way forth like a worm, expanding and contracting. That's when its friend followed suit. An even thicker male finger slowly slid from the cut, slick and covered in uterine goo. Did I mention that this woman was 54 kilograms? That's 119 pounds. I checked this stat several times. She wasn't big enough to have a man living inside of her. A third finger was wiggling its way through when the men came in. I was wrist deep in a human burrito, so there wasn't much I could do to stop them as 2 locked the door and another 2 came to speak with me. "Sew it up," one of them said forcefully. "I can't," I responded curtly. When I'm in surgeon mode, business is the only thing on my mind. The second man reached out and turned off the machines that were keeping my patient stable. Her breathing stopped instantly, and every alarm we have began to scream at once. "You'll sew her back up with all the original parts, or your patient dies." It wasn't a question. I'm a fast learner and a damn good surgeon. My arms were already reacting before my mind had reached a final decision. The masculine fingers caressed me sensually as I wrapped my own hand around them and started to push them back. The slick red fluid proved to be an excellent lubricant. The fingers had stroked nearly every part of my hands before they disappeared inside the woman's splayed torso. One of the men shook me from my reverie in time for me to look down and see that my arm had disappeared nearly to the elbow. I had a controlled panic attack as I realized that I could not remember the past minute of my life. How long had I been sinking into her? The man peered down and nodded. "You'd best get this finished. It would be better for all involved." My hands are shaking as I write this, but I was steady as a rock when I sewed her up. I'm good at what I do. The patient awoke as normal. She was under the influence of 50 milligrams of Demerol and fairly loopy, but didn't exhibit any negative symptoms associated with the partially detached cyst or the unholy juice-covered man fingers. I did not document the mysterious men's intrusion on the medical record. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary for the rest of the day. The men left as I was closing the incision, and everyone in the OR made the collective decision not to talk about what had just transpired. I probably shouldn't be discussing it here. HIPAA is pretty clear on the issue of sharing private information. It's a bad thing to do. But it seems that there are even worse things in play than breaking an oath. I think my story needs to be heard. Whatever's being hidden is clearly starting to get out. I'd rather burn it to the ground before it becomes an issue. To be honest, though, I have a lot of doubts about my future at St. Francis Hospital here in Charleston, West Virginia. You see, for the past 5 minutes, some men have been knocking at my front door. The ones who walked around to flank my back doors did so with an intentional lack of discretion. I can't think of an end to this story that isn't awful. But the knocking is getting more aggressive, and I think my time is up. I'll share what I can if there's any way for me to do so, but I doubt that will happen. One closing thought. When I snapped out of my daydream, I couldn't see the end of my arm, but I could feel it. My hand was brushing up against another arm. It was wearing a surgeon's glove and holding a scalpel that felt identical to my own.